I would like to welcome Bryant Ellis to the stage, to the carpet. Welcome to my carpet. So one of the things then that just flips up. So Bryant here is amazing. You have accomplished a lot in a kind of minimal amount of time, really, like looking back on the timeline of everything. Yeah. And so,
6 years.
Exactly. And so he's going to be telling us about the Adventure Challenge, and we're going to be talking about risk and kind of what that looked like in those beginning stages and kind of now what that looks like and what that has grown into. But recently you were, can we say crowned? Is that like crowned like one of Forbes 30 under 30?
Oh,
that seems like a crowning thing, right? So well done. And then how many copies of the Adventure Challenge have you sold to date, roughly? Any idea?
I couldn't tell you. A couple million, maybe 3.
Yeah.
3, maybe 4. Yeah.
Which, that's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
That was fun.
well done.
Thank you.
Just to begin, tell us about TAC. Where did the idea come from? Tell us just kind of like that beginning story of sorts.
So the origin of it came, I mean, it was years before I actually ever started creating it. It was actually, so I have ADHD. You'll probably notice that tonight as I talk and bunny trail through different things. But I hate board games and game nights, which I'm sorry if that offends you because a lot of people really like Settlers of Catan and things like that. I can't stand playing the same game over again. I can't stand sitting for hours, doing something that we know we're gonna do. So the original concept was if somebody could make a game where every time you played, you didn't know what you were gonna do until you did it. Kind of like Jumanji or something like that. I was like, that'd be sick. Like, I'd play that game. And so I told a couple of my roommates the idea. This was maybe 2012, back when I told some people. And when I was describing it, I was like, we could make like a home group around it. Everyone gets shirts. And they were like, it sounds like a cult.
And actually,
Yeah.
I'm going to put a quick pause. I totally made the assumption that everyone knows what the Adventure Challenge is. Can we zoom out real fast? What's the Adventure Challenge?
Oh, yeah. So I'm getting to that part. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay,
this is
great.
the origin of the idea,
Yes.
right? So it was to make a game that every time you played, you had no idea what you're doing until you started playing it, like Jumanji. So I told my roommates about this game. It was going to be a box. You push a button, it shoots up a card, and it tells you what you have to do for the day. And they thought it was ridiculous and kind of laughed at it. And I was 19, insecure enough to where I just let the idea go. I thought it was stupid. And it didn't make sense to like push a button and a card to come up. And I was like, it's missing something. So fast forward to maybe 2017. And I'm a Christian, so I was spending time reading the Bible and praying. I wasn't thinking about ideas. I wasn't thinking about business. And I just saw a picture of my head of someone scratching off a card. And I was like, oh, that would be a good idea for the adventure game that I was going to do. Is instead of it being like a button, you scratch off. It's like in a book, and then you can put a Polaroid picture in it. And so I ended up telling some friends, in my friend group, and they loved it. They were like, that's an amazing idea. You should do it. So, I get ideas all the time. Like, I'm sure like a lot of you people in here, entrepreneur-minded, you get a million ideas. You got to decide which ones you're actually going to pursue, which ones are going to be good for your timeline, make you money, get you out of, whatever you're doing. And to me, it wasn't an idea or a concept that was going to make money. It was just a game to play with my friends and community. And so I was working a job. I was inspecting skyscrapers. Was not qualified for it at all, but I was hired. And it's kind of wild because I got fired from that job and had a moment of panic because I was pursuing acting at the time. And so inspecting skyscrapers was great because I could go to auditions and then do, inspections on my own free time. And so I was like, well, now that I don't have that, I'm screwed. How am I going to be an actor unless I make something that can free up my time? So I was going to do real estate photography. So I actually drove to Best Buy in a panic, started throwing camera equipment into a shopping cart, and I saw a Polaroid camera sitting on the shelf. And I felt like I heard God say, buy that Polaroid camera and make your scratch-off book. And I was like, well, God, that's not a business idea. That's just a fun game, like a hobby. And it was one of those moments where it just felt so, like you could just feel it. Whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it was a moment where it was a very audible, thing. I was like, whatever. So I took my credit card, got a Polaroid camera, bought a journal, and I went to my house. And I actually have it on YouTube somewhere. I filmed this moment. I have it on camera, and I said, well, this is day one. I'm making this adventure book. And so the Adventure Challenge is a series of books that are filled with adventures, dates, fun games to do with your family. You don't know what you're getting into until you scratch off a little box. It tells you what to do. It comes with a Polaroid camera, so you can take a picture, put it right next to the adventure, so it turns into like a keepsake book. And that was it. That was where the concept came from. That's where I started making it. And it was the wildest journey in production and creating it that I've ever had. Did not think it was going to change my life. I thought I was going to be pursuing acting, and that was going to be a thing. And then I was in business. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So what would you say, outside of that initial, like, purchasing that Polaroid camera, what would you say was, like, the next, like, really big, significant step that you took toward the beginning of the Adventure Challenge's story?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, even inspecting skyscrapers, independent contractor. The reason I got fired is because I was too entrepreneurial, and I would hire my friends to do the inspections. They didn't say I couldn't do that, you know.
And this is before ChatGPT,
Yeah.
so you can't be like, is it good? I don't know.
I was like, I get 80 an hour. I can hire my friends at 20 an hour and profit 60 an hour, right? Like, it was, they didn't like that. I got fired for it. So,
That's a good business lesson too, you know.
Read the contracts. But as a kid, I started a lawnmower business, a landscaping company. I don't know. It was always just the entrepreneurial bug was always in me. I always had ideas. I didn't know how to scale a business. I didn't know how to take a product from concept to creation, and honestly, it was just a wild journey. And I think, as entrepreneurs, I'm sure a lot of you guys have ideas that you're working on, and you're like, I don't know what step number 4 is going to look like. What I think the craziest thing was just focus on what's right in front of you. Whatever you have the ability to do right now, do that. The second door finds a way of opening itself. But we stop because we get so fixated on, like, what's going to be in a year from now? What are we going to charge? How are we going to do marketing? How are we going to... It's like, no, well, you're not even there yet. Just start by drawing a picture of what you want to create. Start by drawing, my first, I wish I would have brought it if I thought of it, my first prototype of Adventure Challenge was literally a book where I bought, scratch off material, cut it into squares, stuck it on. It looks janky as hell. Like, it's nothing that you would want to buy, right? And even showing it to investors, they're looking at it and they're like, this kid's crazy. And so, yeah, I think it was just taking every step, one step at a time. I would randomly meet someone. I don't know if you guys know Kellen. Is he part of this group at all? He's an entrepreneur around here. You know Kellen? Yeah, he's rad. I literally met with him and I was like, dude, I got this idea. And he was like, okay, I'm going to connect you with a manufacturer in China. So that's where, we learned how to source products from a different country.
And the first one worked out really great, right?
It was horrible. Yeah. Were you being sarcastic? Yeah.
I know the story of it.
Okay, gotcha.
I like
so we ordered 1,000
funny.
units, and the scratcher material didn't come off of the book, and so you had to take like a sponge and just like scrape it off. And I had to make a video and send it to 1,000 people, being like, "Hey, you can't use a coin, but you can use a sponge, and the sponge will scrape it off." And it was wild, and it was just like one of those things where you just kind of fall on your face, you get up and you keep moving forward. And if I would have waited for the book to be perfect before selling it, we would have never made the momentum and progress that we did. I think within that year, the first year of business, I think we did maybe 2 million in revenue, and then the second year it just kind of grew up from there. And it was just one of those things that was like, we just kept throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what stuck. And, and it was crazy,
Totally. So was there like a moment where it kind of like dawned on you that you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to work?
Yeah. I don't know.
Or at least it was maybe just a self-realization that it's like, kind of like you were saying, it's like, oh, this might be like a fun thing to do with like my friends or something. But then it's like, wow, we have this full-fledged business that's soaring.
So I guess I'd ask this, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not very, 10 being very, how vulnerable do you want me to be? Very. Okay.
It looks like it's a 10.
Yeah. We'll do that 10. So
it is on recording. You choose how much you want to be.
I like talking transparently and vulnerably because I don't think it does anybody any good to just talk about the good times and make it sound like everything was perfect and I'm this super smart entrepreneur who, I think it was kind of wild because it got so stressful and crazy in the first season of like making these books. And I've had ADHD my whole life. I've never been medicated for it. But I think there was a timeline when we were starting to create the product where I got overwhelmed in crazy stress and did not have a good relationship with Adderall and alcohol. And so for those of you who don't know, alcohol is an upper, it helps release serotonin and dopamine, so it helps you focus more with ADHD. If you abuse it, it just keeps you wired and you kind of feel robotic and you're not super present. And then to come off of it, drinking a lot of alcohol to help go to sleep. So it was kind of a nasty, vicious cycle where there was this really cool idea and it was starting to take off, but I was so overwhelmed and had so much anxiety, a lot of pressure that I put on myself because you go from never managing an employee to now you have 30, 40 employees, and they're like, well, you're the leader, so you should know what to do. And it's like, no, you just learn as you go. You don't know how to be a leader until you've been put into a position of leadership, most of us, right? Like you can read all the books, but until you're actually in charge of people and you actually have to make hard decisions, you really don't know what it's like. And I made all of the wrong choices the first few years. And it was just really unhealthy boundaries and habits with my lifestyle. And so, not working out, not putting good food in my body, taking a lot of Adderall, using alcohol to go to sleep. And so when it started to take off, I remember I got my first check for $100,000. And I mean, back in my family has never seen money like that, right? It wasn't like, I'm used to making 15 an hour at that time, and that was crazy money. I remember getting the first check for $100,000 and being like, I feel nothing. Like I don't feel any happiness, any joy. It just felt like it was blah. All right, on to the next. And so that was kind of a weird season of life where it was like I didn't really, and I was pretty young and ignorant to what that was doing to my body, my mind, and stuff like that. But so to answer your question, I didn't really think in the moment where it was like it was working. It just felt so robotic. Like it almost felt, looking back, it almost felt like a dream because it was just kind of just happening and it felt a little hazy. I think that's my biggest regret in TAC is not being more present, doing the hard work to alleviate anxiety, take better care of my body. They say work-life balance. Guys, there is no such thing as perfect life balance. In entrepreneurism, you find seasons of work-life balance, but there's also the seasons of intense obsession, right? And I've never known anybody to be truly successful when they don't have those seasons of obsession. You can't live in those seasons. Those seasons will kill you, but you have to be aware of when you're in them and when it's time to come out. And I wish I would have understood that because it was just full pedal to the metal, 100%, go, 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 take things to make me go up, take things to make me go down, and then it was pretty intense depression that I went through following that. So, yeah.
Thank you for that 10 vulnerability, because that is sometimes that side of business and entrepreneurship that doesn't get talked about because that's not the glamorous side, but that is a very real side for sure. So with that, once you guys started selling and growing and different opportunities started coming your way, how did those kind of challenges change essentially as those problems got bigger? And then like, was there fun aspects, or was it just like all overwhelming? It's like, oh my gosh, like building the plane as we fly, which I don't suggest you do for your thing. Yeah. Please don't. But
no, I mean, it was crazy because we hired a lot of people during that season where I don't think any of us had really scaled a business to that extent before. So we had hired a lot of people who in theory had a lot of good wisdom, understanding, and concepts, but none of us had really taken a product from 0 to $1 million and seen that level of success. And so I think we were all kind of just falling on our face, trying to figure out what to do, and it grew us a lot. But yeah, it was fun at times. It was cool. I've always been about people and community. Like that's been my favorite part of owning a business is actually having, a culture and groups of people that you get to do life with. And so that was my favorite part, was getting to have, I think at the peak we were at 110 employees, and so it was really fun to get to. I'm a kid at heart, so every company party we're having Nerf gun wars, and we're renting out the paintball and airsoft arenas, doing stuff like that. And I think the best memories I have were just this is the people doing fun stuff together, building cool things, and but just a tremendous amount of stress. I think it was overwhelmingly stressful to where I would get invited to speaking and gigs or like stuff like this, and I'd be like, absolutely not. Like, I have no capacity for any ability to sit in front of people and talk because I am nervous and anxiety ridden all day long because of what's going on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of in a roundabout sense. Yeah. So when you think about like risk, because if you guys don't know, he's also a published author.
Yeah, thank you.
Clap, clap, clap. So with that, one of the things that you like to talk about a lot is risk and fear and failure and how all of those play together. So with risk, what are some things that you can speak into people taking those steps of risk? Specifically, it's like, hey, maybe I've already taken a couple of steps here, and I'm like down like couple months, maybe a year or two into the business journey, but it's like the next one is like, whoa, that's a big risk.
Yeah.
What would you speak to in that sense, either from your experience?
So one of the reasons I like to talk transparent and vulnerably is because we all have shit in our lives we're dealing with. We all, like, none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things we look back and say, I wish I would have done this better. All of us fail. Like, there's nobody in this room, if you've pursued anything worthwhile that you're passionate about, you've had failures. Now, to the extent of the size, can vary from person to person, but you're just going to experience it. Failure has been something that, as an early age, it was almost like it clicked. It was like failure is just part of the process, and the faster you can fail, the faster you can succeed. So whenever I'd get an idea, like as a kid, I'd be like, I want to learn how to spin a ball on my finger, like a basketball. I'd lock myself in a room for a couple hours until I figured it out. That process was me just throwing the ball and twirling it until my hand had the muscle memory to hold the ball. Same with juggling. I locked myself in a room, would just do that until I could figure out how to do it. And I think as I grew up, it was just like, oh, that's just part of life. When you want something, when you want to figure out something, your body and brain have to catch up, right? You have to learn what it is to do before you succeed at it. And it takes some people longer, some people shorter, but the truth is anybody who's going to judge you when you fail are people who probably aren't taking risks themselves, right? Like, nobody's going to watch you take a risk and fall on your face and go, what an idiot. Like, who do they think they are to take that risk and to do that thing? No, like, if they are saying that, and there might be people who say that, but they're not doing anything with their lives that, that can measure up to the pursuits that you're taking. I don't remember the saying, I'm going to butcher it, but it's like nobody looks down on you who's doing better. I'm butchering the term.
I know exactly what you're saying. I tried to tell this to actually Eric the other day, and I totally butchered it too. But it was along the lines of like, anyone who has more money than you isn't going to look down if you're trying to make money. They're like, oh no, I get it. Like, they're not going to look down on you for saying no to certain things or prioritizing things differently. Or someone who has greater success than you isn't going to look down when you're like, no, I can't do X, Y, Z because I'm going after this thing.
Yeah. You go to a stand-up comedy, show, where people have 5 minutes to do a set. And, if you're into stand-up comedy and you're watching someone perform and they just bomb, right, that nobody's laughing at their stuff and their jokes suck, you're sitting there like, I've been there. I understand what pain you're going through. That sucks. Other comedians aren't going like, what an idiot. This person sucks. They're like, okay, they haven't put in the reps yet. They're going through the process that hurts right now. And that's what I see when I see people take risks and fail. It's like, ooh, I hope it doesn't discourage them enough for them to quit, because that's where it gets really good. When you take a risk, when you enter the arena and you fail, that's the moment where it's like, are you gonna move forward? Are you gonna take the next risk to see what happens then? And so I think that within Adventure Challenge, there were tons of risks and things that we took. I didn't see them as risks, and I didn't see them as failures. It was just putting the reps in. It was like, we work with the manufacturer. They send you, crap products. All right, next, what do we do now? We fire someone a certain way. It doesn't work, and it taints the relationship. Okay, we learn it. I do it this way. And it's a constant evolution of like, you're not expected to be perfect. You're going to get judged when you make mistakes. That's part of it. But you have to be okay with that. I feel like, if you're in this room and you're building something, if you're in leadership, if you desire to be in leadership, leadership is a giant dartboard you're placing on yourself, and everyone gets to throw the darts at you. And I think as parents, as school teachers, as leaders, as pastors, as CEOs, people want to vent their frustrations and their problems onto you. And you have to learn to take that and filter it through. What can I learn from this? Did I do something that I can improve? But then also not take responsibility for part of it and be like, this could also be coming from their own pain. So.
No, that's real good. That'll be a great little clip it there.
Yeah, thanks.
You know? So is there a time that you can specifically share when you had to say no to an opportunity, and what did that teach you?
Probably public speaking.
I'm glad you said yes to me when we asked.
Yeah. No, you're the first since I've moved back.
I know, truly, I was like, sweet. So thank you.
No, I think you have to be aware of what season you're in, right? Like for me, I've been sober for years, and that's something that is very important to me. So I let myself get up to a certain level of anxiety before I go, all right, I'm gonna pull it back. Public speaking is one of those things that can push you over the edge. Depending on the size, how often, the frequency, it for me especially, but it was one of those things when I moved to San Diego, it was like, I can't do it. Like, it's too much. I actually need to be taking the risks that I really want and actually saying no to public speaking. And so, as in this season of life, I've actually said, you know what, I'm gonna be okay with letting that add to some anxiety, because I don't love sitting in front of a group of people talking in a microphone.
Yeah, you're doing great. Don't worry about
it. I say that I do love it. I don't like the build up to it, right? I actually like talking. I have my own podcast. I love being on podcasts, but there is something to where, public failure sucks, and so I think there's been a lot of risks, a lot of opportunities that I've said no to, and I don't really regret those as much.
Has there been anything at TAC that you guys had said no to, and that either was a good thing or a bad thing?
Let me think.
I mean, I know there's a million decisions that you make every day in a business, but were there any particular standouts?
That's a good question.
The next question is, was there an opportunity you said yes to and a risk that you took at TAC that ended up paying off dividends?
Yeah.
You can take either one.
I mean, I think retail was one that we took that paid off big. Retail's kind of what's keeping us pumping right now. D2C, if you got anyone who's making a product right now, or some invention that you're gonna use ads to scale, there was kind of an inflection where retail was the way to go with products. Retail kind of dropped. D2C was the way to go. D2C, you make a lot, the margins are a lot better, and you can find an ad and get like a 10x ROAS on marketing.
D2C and ROAS means?
Direct to consumer. Yeah, so direct to consumer would be D2C, so selling directly from a website to a customer. So running like a Facebook or Instagram ad, they buy and they go to your website and they buy from you. 10x ROAS being a 10x return on ad spend. So you put $100 into a Facebook ad, you want to get $200 back, depending on your product and your margin. At the beginning of TAC, we were getting $1,000 back. We'd put 100 in and get 1,000 back.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that'd be like a 10x ROAS, which is insane for a new product, right? You'd have like Squatty Potty and Poopery and companies like that would do it, but it wasn't really, not a lot of companies were doing that kind of scaling. And so that was kind of the way to go, and that's what grew us until we were doing like 70, 80 million a year in revenue at that point. But people were encouraging us to turn into retail as like a buffer, something to mitigate some of the risk. We decided to lean into that. D2C has been saturated tremendously, so being in retail has like been our saving grace. And so we're like in Targets all over the world, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Costco, so we're in a lot of retail now, and on the bad years, that's been keeping us going strong. And so we just got 3 new products in Target, actually, which is super exciting.
Ooh, that is fun.
Yeah. I can't think of any opportunities I said no to. I remember people I said no to hiring and found out it was a good idea, but not really. I can't think of any like opportunities that we've done. So
Yeah, totally. So I have about one or two more questions here, and then the floor is open to you guys. So if you have any thoughts percolating here, I'll hand over the mic here shortly. So any key lessons that you've learned about kind of like balancing that idea of both growth and actual like practical considerations, as in like say funding or your ability to turn out X amount of product? So balancing fast growth while also balancing your resources.
Yeah, I think we're kind of learning that right now, because I think D2C was so incredible for us at the beginning, and that was kind of like it seemed, guys, nothing lasts forever, right? If you come up with an idea, it's super novel, super original, you need to be making plans for other ways you're going to market other than just Facebook and Instagram. You also don't want to be dependent on another man's or woman's platform for your main source of revenue. So love what Zuckerberg has built, but it's also gone to crap, and we have had to have crazy layoffs and crazy times of hardship because it's like we were so dependent on that. And so I actually was living in San Diego and made the decision to move back up here to take over back again as CEO, because we were dropping in revenue pretty considerately because of what was happening with Meta and Facebook. And so, being in retail, going into TikTok, influencers, stronger email and text campaigns, things like that have actually helped kind of build us a more stable base. And so I think it's something you just should be focusing on. If something's really working and paying the bills, like lean into it, but slowly diversify to get fixated on other stuff, because it just doesn't last forever. If you're making $100 million off of TikTok, it's not going to be there forever. It's going to go to Pinterest someday, and it'll go to some new phone app we get.
Red Note, is that right?
Red Note, yeah. Thank God TikTok got turned back on, because that was actually helping us a lot, and then it turned off, and I was like, crap. So
just 12 hours there.
Just 12 hours. Yep. Yeah. So.
Nice. So last question for me here would be, can you recommend a process for identifying which risk is actually worth taking and which ones to avoid? Just a simple little answer there. So like,
I'm going to butcher this quote too. A wise man writes his vision in ink and his plans in pencil. And so,
that doesn't seem butchered.
I think I nailed that one.
That was good.
That was good. Yeah.
Good on that one.
I'm proud of myself for that one.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think that there's when you're learning how to navigate what risks I should be taking and what I should be putting on the side, I think it has to do with, what's your ultimate goal? Like, what are the things you're going after? And so there's a lot of risks you could take. Someone could ask you to sing on stage, and that would be a risk because you're scared shitless to do that. But is that actually taking you closer to the things that you want? Maybe it is. Maybe it's instilling a sense of bravery, and you're like, oh yeah, this will help me come out of my shell more. But ideally for me, not. I'm not getting on stage and I'm not singing. I hate singing. It's not going to be something I do because it's not actually going to take me closer to my goal, and it's going to give me a panic attack. So I think you have to measure your risk with your passion and what you're going after, and decide, is this something that's going to get me closer? I would say that with the caveat of, do I have the capacity currently to take this risk and handle the consequences of failure? Because I think there are times, especially like if you have kids, a family, and you have a lot of responsibility and you don't have much money, and it's like, should I take this risk and bet everything on this Ripple coin, and put my, or not? If you're single, yeah, go for it, do it, but if you have to measure where you're at and decide, is it something that I have the capacity to handle the failure if I don't? I've made some massive investment risks that have ended horribly, and I'm glad I did it as a single person. I'm glad I didn't do it when I had a bunch of financial responsibilities, and but at the same time, you're also not going to know what the outcome is, and sometimes you just got to go for it, So I would say measure the consequence, understand if you're able to handle that in your season of life, make sure it's actually being aimed at what you really want to go after, and then, just, take a leap. One thing I would say about risks, have somebody to talk to after you fail. Talk to them before you take the risk, like an accountability partner, a mentor, a best friend. Hey, look, I'm going on stage and I'm doing stand-up comedy. I'm scared shitless. I just want to tell you how I'm scared, and, oh, you're going to kill it. You're going to crush it. You're going to do so good. You go up on stage, maybe you bomb, maybe you do good. If you bomb, you go back to your friend. I sucked. And I hope your friend laughs. And I hope your friend doesn't take it too seriously. And your friend can be like, you are so brave to actually take this risk, stand in front of people for 5 minutes and try to make them laugh. That's hard. My brother Trey does that. So I use that as an analogy a lot because I think that's probably brave. But have someone to talk to about your risks, because this sucks. The journey of entrepreneurism is gnarly. It's not for everybody. It's not something, if it's not a passion, don't do it. Please don't do it, because it is full of crazy, wild obstacles that I don't think everybody will enjoy doing, and everyone will succeed. So it's like a part of the fulfillment is the game that you're playing. And so, did that answer your question?
Really well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No,
That's
that's
fantastic.
great.
Thank you.
So now we're going wild card, and these guys can ask you questions. So who has questions for Bryant? Oh, we got hands.
I like your hat, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So when you started out, did you were you working a job at the same time as building the business, or did you just fully abandon job and go all in and take that risk?
So I was a full-time student. I was working a job. I got fired from my job, and
The skyscraper job.
yeah. I had to pivot hard, and I lived off of credit cards, and then maxed them out, and then almost went into bankruptcy. and then, so once again, that was a risk. I was single. I was living with a bunch of dudes. The failure would have been me moving back in with my mom and dad. I didn't have kids that would be on the street. But I would say, are you asking in reference to like the kind of the balance of working full time and building your own side hustle? That's a big one. I would say, like, one, evaluate your level of responsibility, kids, family. If not, you're single, dude, you send it, right? Like, I wouldn't say quit your job, but I would say find the time that you do have to be able to dedicate solely to building your side hustle. That might be the obsessive season. That might be the season you're not doing a lot with community. You're doing push-ups and sit-ups for your workout. You're not spending a lot of time watching Netflix or playing video games, and you're 3 to 6 months just grinding and cranking away. I would try to have at least a day to spend with people so you don't go too crazy. But yeah, I would say and if you do have kids and you do have a family, then just, it's going to be different. I didn't do it in that season, so I wouldn't be the best person to kind of tell you what that could look like. My brother Trey he works full time for Adventure Challenge as the creative director, and he's building his own program. And he dedicates like 5 or 6 hours on the weekends to build it. And so that's kind of what he's been doing to do that. But at some point you have to have that number of like, this is how much I need to live. This job's paying me, 80 or 90. I only need 50 to live. Once I'm making 50, I'm jumping ship. I'm going to take the hit financially, and I'm going to just full send this one. Does that answer your question?
Helps. Yeah.
It helps. Okay. Yeah.
So cool. You just described the S-curve in the financial industry when we
What's
advise
that?
people.
What was that?
You just described what we call S-curve when we try to do financial planning for people.
Oh, cool.
Your
Yeah.
responsibility and your risk factor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
S-curve. I'm going to look that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I made that up. So.
No. I was like, you just described it perfectly.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Awesome.
So my question, I'm curious, I love how you describe the work-life challenge, the balance for entrepreneurs. And I'm curious about when you say you need to know how to pull yourself out of that season. Can you share more, like what are the clues that you can, because when you get into ground and hustle, you're in there, right?
Yeah.
And my problem is the reverse. It's like I learn to rest. It's like I cannot get my body, to function in a way of like hustling, bustling once I'm used to it.
So you said your problem is the opposite, to where you get used to rest, and then it's hard to click back into the
Yes.
obsessive workforce.
And also, when you mentioned you have to know how to pull yourself out of the grind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. In order to be healthy. I love your concept. It's like that is eye-opening. It's like a farmer. It's like like harvest season. You don't sleep. You need to. There's a time frame, right, to get things done. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You need to know what ways you can rest. I have ADHD, so I'm not. I don't like doing something unless it's like triggering my dopamine, right? So like skydiving, surfing, pickleball works. There's just random things. I did a lot of bungee jumping. Like I was an adrenaline junkie, and that kind of was. But I would just like plan weekend trips, to go do something. It's really hard to get out of the grind once you're in it, especially if you haven't hit the breakthrough that you've been looking for. And so if you're going on a 7-8 month streak and you haven't hit that breakthrough and you're just deteriorating, you need to take a break. You need to be able to actually kind of reset, what is this looking like, what's not working, create some balance. And I don't even know what that is. It's not written in stone what the timeline is, because 1 month of hard, aggressive pursuit for one person could be devastating to their life, right? To where they get back into addiction and bad cycles and things like that. And some people can go 6 months. So it's self-awareness, understanding where you're at and like where you're hitting that capacity. For me, it starts to feel dark. Like when I get into those work grooves and I start to be a little more tempted to grab onto more addictive behaviors, I start to feel incredibly lonely, and it just feels like bleak and dark, and it's like, I need to switch out of this. And so I actually just came out of one of those cycles too. When I came back to Reading, I had to jump pretty heavy into Adventure Challenge to get things back going. And it was probably lasted 4 to 5 months. And it was like, I'm noticing my body's starting to freak out. I'm starting to be more drawn to addictive behaviors. So I'm gonna pull back, spend more time with friends, family, because sometimes pulling out of it and being able to invest in community, resetting your brain, you'll figure out the breakthrough. Like that happens a lot, where you start to like refresh and I think physical fitness is one of those things that's really hard to separate from the work-life balance. I swear to God, even if it's just push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, and walking a mile, that takes you 30 minutes, right? Just doing that, the way it refreshes your brains and keeps your energy going and keeps you going good. I mean, and I could talk about food and diet, nutrition, and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, learning to figure out what do I have capacity to do and what am I able to sacrifice. And to some people, it's just going to look different. So, but for your side of how to get back into that, just baby steps. Just like if you're in a season of intense rest and you're like, man, I need to get back into this grind, then it's just like, all right, well, next week I am doing just 30 minutes of work a day. And then I'm going to see how I feel. And the next week it's an hour. And then we're going to double that. And then, you just kind of get yourself back into that. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I have a question for you. Right next to her.
Oh, yes.
We're just going down the line.
I love your massages, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank
so
you.
fantastic.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. So I was wondering, how did you get from, okay, you're like creating your book, cutting things out, to, okay, now I need to actually start doing a print run, and like just even like the sales, did you just like make the leap, okay, we're just going to produce them first and then see how you get them out there? And then second, like how did you actually get them out there? Like what were some of the things you did? And then did you have investors, or like that kind of middle, like in between, okay, I've got something, I like for myself, I'm like, okay, I am hand stitching, I don't want to get 1 billion orders and can't do it, but I'm not ready to create a warehouse, and how do I even get them out there to make sure? I'm like, okay, do I do a Kickstarter? Do I not? I'm like in that, I don't know how to make that transition of, I want to push them out, but I don't want to also grow too big if it does do great and not be able to produce, so.
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer all those, but I would say don't be too afraid to blow it up and get it too big, because if that happens, you'll figure out a way to get them made. That's the least of your worries. If it blows up and you're like, I need to figure out a way to make this, you're going to figure it out. You'll have friends. Yeah, you'll find friends and family, you'll find outsourcing, but your first question was, how did we first push it out there?
Yeah, like how do you first, how do you first push it out there?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So my theory was Kickstarter, because I was like, Kickstarter is going to be the way to sell. Kickstarter is 80% male, and I'm going to butcher the statistic, but the typical salary of the person on Kickstarter who is male is like 90 to 120 a year, and it's East Coast. So there's a more of a specific demographic that I was unaware of. I just saw Kickstarter stories where you put it on Kickstarter, it goes viral, and you make $1 million. I put mine on Kickstarter and it failed twice. So Kickstarter didn't work for me. What worked for me was putting it on an ad targeting females. So females 18 to 30 was the one that actually nailed it, because women would send it to their boyfriends. So the first one that we made was a dating book. The first book I made was for like a game to do with friends. Nobody wanted it. I was like, I might make one for dating, and that exploded. And how we got it to do that was I took my iPhone, I made an ad, I locked myself in a closet with a pint of whiskey and spent a whole night editing this commercial, gave it to my business partner. He put it on Facebook, and it blew up with ad dollars behind it. It didn't go up naturally. It was like we started to scale it via meta spend. And so, yeah, I would talk to somebody who's really good with, advertising, and who's really good at utilizing ads. You have to be very careful because there's a lot of people who say they're very good at ads, and you're gonna pay 90 cents to make 80 cents. And you're not gonna notice that until it's been like 2 months, and then you've spent all this money and made no money. And so I would just say be careful with that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of, just depending on the product, just get creative. I think you're Christian. Ask the Lord, what's it? There's going to be new ways of marketing every day. With AI and technology, it's shifting, right? So each product's going to be different, and the ways that we do it are just constantly evolving. And so don't get fixated on one once you find one that works too.
Did you first have, was it after you got your first 1,000 that you did that, or did you do it with just the?
No, we didn't sell a single one until we did that. Yeah, we maybe a couple, like from friends and family, but we didn't sell any until we figured out the ad. Yeah, and I was completely ignorant to ads. My business partner was like, we should run Facebook ads. And I was like, that's a scam. No one buys things off Facebook or Instagram. And he was like, please, let me try.
I mean, inventory. Did you got all your inventory first and then you started?
We bought 1,000. Yeah, so we bought 1,000. Those were the crappy ones that didn't work. Yeah, and then we hand packaged them and put them in the mail. I have videos of me and Ben Day pushing a cart to like FedEx and like loading them in and like getting jammed because there's too many. And so yeah, we ordered 1,000 and then we used those 1,000. That's another good thing is I didn't raise funds as a lot of people traditionally do for things like this. I met with a few investors. They were super kind, but I didn't like what they offered. So I ended up telling my friend Ben, and I was like, dude, do you want to go into business with me? And I was like, you got money, right? And he's like, I got some. And I was like, give me like 30 grand and you can be my business partner. And so he became my business partner. What's up? Oh, it was, yeah, he loves it. Yeah, he's stoked about it now. So, but yeah, so that I got 30 grand, but he didn't technically have 30 grand. He had like 9. And so we used the 9 to kind of like get the website going and some other things going, but then like he kind of paid me through his profit. So yeah, it was a really good deal for him. But yeah, it was just kind of a weird timing thing. But I didn't raise funds. What we did was pre-sales. So pre-sales is an amazing way to actually raise capital without having to give away any equity. So what we did is, and it's a crap load and a half of customer support. So make sure you have an army of people ready to answer emails and apologize, because even if you say it's 4 to 8 weeks out, week 2 they're going to be complaining 5 times a week about where's my product. But you can raise 30 grand by selling a couple thousand products that you haven't even bought yet. And then you have it expedited from whatever country, or if you're making it here, here. So, yeah.
We have about 2 more questions. I have one right here with Bud.
Yeah, Bryant, first of all, thank you. I really commend you for the courage of your transparency.
Yeah.
Amazing. And my question is more of a projection question. Given what you've learned, how do you roll that over in an investment sense to optimize future? And what does the future look like 5 years out from now for you?
For Adventure Challenge, or
Yes.
for
Your business?
For this business?
Yes.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. We're still trying to figure some things out to be like, where do we want this? What do we want this to evolve into? If I'm being fully transparent, like I don't have a passion for scratch-off activity books, right? Like that's not what makes me come alive and super excited, but I have a passion for the people who work at the company, and I have a passion for people being inspired to connect with other humans, and that's our like mission statement, right? Inspire human connection. So we're working on, I had an idea for a new concept of a product that is kind of like, this is kind of like my last product for this company, to where it's like, I think this is gonna be my last innovation of, I wanna create this, it's gonna be for married couples, it's gonna be a lot deeper, and it's gonna be more of a counseling therapeutic type tool. And then I want to pass the baton off. I want somebody else to lead it who has a passion for it. So I would love to own it for the next umpteen years that it stays alive and AI doesn't take over the world and we're able to do e-commerce, and it to be a blessing to my family and to get ideas for things and to create. But I don't know, it's I'm just kind of taking it one year at a time. And this year is like, I want to make sure that everybody who's working for the company has a good time working for it. And I think there was a rough season where people are just stressed, man. I think with Zuckerberg made a lot of changes to ads, and we went from like 80 million in revenue, and we cut it in half in 1 year. It dropped overnight, and we had to fire fast. So we had to fire like 40 people in weeks, and that is devastating to a culture. That hurts. Like when your best friends all get fired and you're kept, and it's I come back into the company and it's like, all right, everyone hates all the leadership team, and we got to figure out how to get this back on its feet and do good. And so we're out of that now, but it's still like, I don't want that to ever happen again, right? I don't want that to happen with Adventure Challenge. And so we're doing our best to figure out ways to kind of create more of a holistic structure to where we're able to be more, just sustainable long term. So a 5-year goal, I'm not sure. I have a lot of other business ideas I'm also excited about. I just got married a year ago, so 5 years vision, thank you. 5-year goal is to be 5 years even closer to my wife, maybe have a kid. And so, yeah.
We have one last question. Okay.
Yeah, I love when people have a creative idea that they're passionate about and then they become lucrative, but I equally love impacting lives and helping people, and you just hit on something with your last response about inspiring connection.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what is your favorite testimonial that you've ever heard of all with your business?
Yeah. It's not even like a hard question because it's so easy. I think, and maybe there's people in the room who have struggled with addiction, and it's a bitch, man. It's one of those things that you, especially with ADHD, it's easy to be fixated on adrenaline. That's one of the things it helps you get out of your chaos of swirl and being able to focus on something. And so the idea came from an ADHD brain, right, to do something spontaneous and crazy. But I think coming back into the company and being sober, and having a healthy lifestyle and pursuing all of these different things. My wife's actually a cancer survivor, and so she had a big tumor in her chest, and she had to do the whole chemo. She had to, bald, everything. It was wild. So she's equally as passionate about health and wellness and having, that balance. And so one testimony that came in is a couple bought our sex book, which is the same books as all other ones that you scratch it off and you do with your married partner, whatever we tell you to do. So really fun. I actually didn't know what any of those challenges were because I was saving it for when I got married to do with my wife. So we just started it this year, and it's been fun. So we're doing scratch off sex adventures. But this one couple actually emailed us and said, we just got out of addiction. I think we're 2 or 3 years sober. Our life has improved dramatically. The one thing that has not improved is sex, because being high while having sex is a lot more fun. And whenever you go sober, that is something that suffers. And they're like, so that was really hard for us to both go sober at the same time. And then sex, it felt like everything was good, but our sex life was just kind of meh. They were like, once we started doing this book, our sex life 5x'd. And they were like, it put butterflies in our stomach again to be able to have these sexual encounters with each other that we thought was lost because we had to let go of drugs and alcohol. And for me, I mean, that might not be the craziest. We've had people who've gotten married because of the books, or they couldn't have kids and they were doing one of our books and then they ended up getting pregnant. So, there's stuff like that where you're just like, yeah, I'm responsible for a few babies on this earth, and that feels really good. And I've been invited to weddings before because the people use the book in their first date up until the proposal. And you're like, that feels amazing. But the sobriety one hit me differently just because it was getting sober, one of the hardest things is figuring out fun things to do. because with alcohol anything can be fun, and without being sober, you really get to figure out what you actually like to do, because you're not forcing your dopamine up when you're at some place. So I think that was my favorite one. So thanks for that question. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bryant, so much for sharing. Super appreciate it. Yes. Right. Relish in the claps. There you go.